I feel like we are underachieving right now, but we can only control what's ahead of us. So no point in thinking back to the bad home losses we've had and what happened after our streak. We got to continue on just trying to be a consistent basketball team, however way possible. That's our challenge for these next 3 games, going to an All-Star break in the second half of the season.
We're going to bring y'all into our huddle.
Today is Friday, February 7th, 2014, and you are in the Warriors Huddle. With me, Bram. With me, as always, my boy and producer, Scott.
Scott here.
And sitting in with us for the first time in a long time, Justin, trapped in Golden State Taylor.
For the first time since you guys hit the big time, Warriors World.
Welcome to ESPN, buddy. How you doing?
Feeling good to be on ESPN. This is going to be on the front page of ESPN, right?
I am absolutely sure that is not going to happen, but you never know. It's a pleasure to have you back. Enough about Warriors World, ESPN, or any of the other topics that are not directly Warriors related. They just sandwiched a couple wins around a terrible Charlotte loss, so you know we got big things to talk about. In the Warriors Update, we're going to go through the last 3 games, break down why the Bobcats' loss was one of the worst in the last 5 years, and why the Chicago win was perhaps more important than it seemed. And we'll also discuss how Harrison Barnes being in the dunk contest might be a very good thing, and maybe even celebrate Jermaine O'Neal's early return, one that he actually was right about when he called it, a few months back. And then in a special edition of WTH, one inspired by the idea that David Stern, in fact, 1, just retired, and 2, is maybe the most savage sports commissioner in the history of sports or commissionership. We're going to try to figure out what the hell was David Stern's most entertaining moment in his long and illustrious tenure as the NBA commissioner. But first, a couple of show notes. We are still sponsored by Uber, my favorite free app for the iPhone and other phones. You guys know my position. Download this thing, and if you do, all you got to do is press a button, and a car will come to you. It's basically like your own free private driver. Scotty, you got some Uber news for us?
Well, they are spreading their services to the North Bay, so they're in Marin, I think San Rafael area now. So, Bram, how can they sign up and get a little discount?
I'll let you know. First, let me say I'm glad you defined where the North Bay is. As an East Bay resident and a self-centered individual, honestly, I've used the phrase North Bay, but don't have any idea of where that actually means. So, Marin,
no,
everything else.
I had the same thing. I went on to Uber's website. It says we're in North Bay now. I didn't know what that meant until I looked at this map that they put up there.
North Bay, but who will
where does that end? Because I know East Bay or the Bay Area, if Vallejo is kind of a boundary, San Jose, Campbell.
Oakland Public Schools, buddy. I know nothing about geography. Here is something that I do know, though, and we mentioned this last week. Let me mention it again now. Kind of a free gift to all the Huddle loyalists who may or may not be out there. If you do download Uber, like I've mentioned, that's free. If you sign up for an account, again, that's free. Go to the little promotional section, put in the word Huddle, Huddle. That'll give you a free ride up to $20 on us as a thank you. So make sure you get out there and try it, man. There's absolutely no reason to do it. All right, let's jump in, gentlemen. Let's start with the past scores and current standings. 3 games since the last time we were behind the mics. A 95-90 win over a pretty bad Utah team. A 91-75 loss at home in one of the worst sporting experiences I've ever endured in person. And then just last night, a 102-87 win over Chicago. Warriors are now 30 and 26th in the West. A full 3 games behind 5th place Houston, but also 3 games ahead of 9th place Memphis, who has now lost 2 in a row. What's kind of weird is that it feels like the Warriors have been terrible, inconsistent, sloppy over this last week, yet and still we're actually in a better position playoff-wise than we were this time last week. So it shows that as volatile as the West is, that doesn't always mean that they're surpassing us. Sometimes we get lucky and they beat up on themselves and we kind of stay in the same position, you know?
Well, normally you'd be happy, look at our schedule. We got a lot of East Coast teams coming to Oracle, but the problem is they're playing down to these crappy teams.
Right.
It's almost like, oh man, I wish the Clippers and the Heat were coming in, which they are.
Yeah, and we'll have to deal with them then. We'll jump into the games naturally, one by one. First, let me cover the most important thing. I'm sure Scotty was going to point out, that being the power rankings from Mark from a C. Stein, our colleague.
He still does those?
At ESPN. Hell yes, he still does them. I live my life by them, Justin. And unfortunately, this week I got a report that we moved down again. Last week we were at 8. This week we're at 10. We're still top 10, but we are hanging on by our fingernails. Now let me point out that does not incorporate last night's win over a terrible Chicago team, so that probably catapults us into number one, but it also doesn't incorporate the loss to Charlotte. So God knows where we really stand on Mark with a C's incredibly important.
Where are the Wizards? Because they went above 500 for the first time since 2009.
I am so proud to say two things. One, I have no idea. Two, I
didn't
could
look
not
that
give
far
less
down
of a
the
Yeah, I mean, I just don't know at all.
But I'm sure that win against the Warriors really boosted them up.
We actually have a policy where we pretend that didn't happen, Justin. So, I mean, let's not talk about things that didn't happen.
I could tell just by listening last week that Scott was just floating the whole time. He couldn't wait to get to that part. It was just like, oh, God.
Maybe my favorite part of any show.
I mean, it was the smug smile.
That was
just
definitely the
smile on his
highlight
face.
of your entire podcasting experience was just, one, the fact that you didn't invite Bram to see that game. I know that felt good just to shove that one down his throat.
He invited me and then just didn't give me the ticket.
No, I just didn't invite you. Because I don't do things the way you do.
I remember you're stupid, on your high horse. I don't live my life the way that you live. We don't have to recover that. Thank you so much, Justin, for doing this. I'm going to derail this from this conversation, get us back on track for the Warriors. Let's go through the games, gentlemen. Let's start with the Utah win. 95-90 win over Utah. I thought this was a really dangerous matchup. You guys will remember it came right after the Clipper win, so it had the chance for that kind of trap game mentality. It was also a scheduled loss. They had played the night before against the Clip. They're on the road against Utah. And maybe even worse than that, they were playing shorthanded. D. Lee had to sit this one out as well as just last night's game with a strained left shoulder. So there was a lot of reasons we could have been screwed.
And I think another reason, and maybe even more important, is the Jazz were honoring Jerry Sloan that night.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that was a coach that meant everything to this franchise.
Until they screwed him.
Correct. And
Nicely played.
You had Stockton and Malone were in attendance.
Yeah.
So emotions were running high there. And luckily, the Jazz weren't able to pull off the win. But it was definitely a trap game.
Incidentally, they showed both of those guys, both Malone and Stockton. Malone looks like he has not aged maybe 30 seconds. Stockton looks like he is maybe 596 years old. I mean, I'm not sure if they replaced him with his father, but my God.
Well, they might have been better off if Sloan, Malone, and Stockton were actually playing in that game. Because the only thing we really had to worry about was, Trey Burke going Nate Robinson on us, or, I don't know,
Gordon Hayward,
Richard Jefferson FU game. I didn't think that was going to happen.
Let's start by congratulating Richard Jefferson for still being alive, let alone continuing to play basketball.
Isn't he?
Yeah, no, he is playing really well. This game was ugly in a lot of ways. Justin, you kind of telegraphed this punch, but the Warriors had this nasty habit of playing either up to or down to their competition. Nothing shows that more than this two-game stretch. The night before, they had this emotional, dominant win over a team in the Clippers that is universally viewed as a contender. The next night, they're playing a team chock full of shitburgers, and they stay with them the entire time. They can never really wrestle their way out. In fact, there was times I thought they were going to lose this game.
And we're not breaking any news here. I mean, it almost feels like we're just a broken record for every other talk show and podcast out there who talks about the Warriors playing down to the competition.
Yeah.
But it's come to the point where, we used to not want to jinx a good team. And now it's like, where you normally say, oh, we're going to stomp them tonight. Now it's like, oh, they better be ready. It's a trap game. You don't want to act too confident at any point in time.
But here's what I love about this team is they do have so many weapons and so many options that eventually someone usually steps up. I mean, tonight, or in this game, it was Curry, who was just absolutely on fire. I mean, he took his first three-pointer from about 5 feet behind the arc.
That was insane.
A shot that's normally reserved for the
the
most hot heat checks that have ever been shot, and he buried it.
And his form doesn't even change. I mean, a lot of the time you can see people kind of heaving it the way a little kid has to pull the ball behind his head before he's strong enough to make it to the basket. Curry has the exact same release regardless if he's taking it from 5 feet or 50 feet. You're absolutely right about the Warriors' skill set and the players who don't necessarily get caught up in the malaise of a shitty game. In this case, it wasn't just Curry. Curry had 44 points, so incredibly impressive. It was also Bogut. I don't know if Bogut was motivated by the fact of coming back to the city where he used to play college. He came out of Utah. Whatever the hell it was, he put up 16 points, 17 rebounds, and was dominant in almost every single phase of the game. In fact, so dominant, let's hear from Bogut on his thoughts on the importance of the win and how they overcame a pretty terrible performance from everyone else.
I thought you were moving extremely well, maybe even quicker than last night, although last night was marvelous. But on back-to-back nights, you had terrific energy.
This one got too far. Third quarter, halfway through, I had 2 flat tires and ran out of gas. So I came out and refilled, and thankfully we got the win. It was a big one for us. This is a big trap game for us. A lot of momentum from yesterday, big win. Could have came in here and later, you know what, but we didn't.
Important win because, now you're past the halfway part in the season, and there are a lot of teams vying for position for a playoff spot.
Yeah, there is, and it's still a long way to go. I got a feeling it's going to be a nail-biter in the West. In the East, different story. We just got to keep building. We're 10 games above 500 again. 10 games. Is that right? Yeah.
11.
Is it 11 now?
Yeah.
Sure?
Yeah, you won 29 now.
Okay.
29, right? No, maybe you're right. 10, 29,
I think I'm right. 29-19. Okay, yeah. So, we're doing well in that sense. Hopefully we keep building, get it to 15 or 20 by the end of the season and see what we like, get some home court advantage.
Few things I love in that quote, in addition to his accent, which I can listen to every day, all day. One, I like the idea that he takes a shot at the East. Everybody knows the East is terrible. Everybody knows the West is tough.
Eastern Conference.
But you don't hear players saying it. It's kind of one of those things like if you have a friend who's incredibly fat, you don't point out that they're incredibly fat. You just let that go out there. Players, when they're talking about the two conferences, never really point out that the East is terrible. Here, he specifically says that's not necessarily the case in the East. He's an honest guy. I love it. Second thing is that he doesn't take Barnett's word for how many wins they have. He doesn't get nasty with him, but he definitely argues.
That reminded me of is Scott correcting your stats. If had you said this is how many wins we got, Scott would have jumped on you right away.
Oh, but he would have first dropped that nasty, smug, happy smile he does when I know he's going to bust me out. Bogut at least kept some semblance of the appropriate mentality before he busted out Barnett.
But the idea that you brought up before of whether it was him going back to his college hometown, really he was tearing it up all week until he missed that game. I mean, he's put up some really nice stat lines recently.
Is he the best passing center in the league? He had a couple of moments where he hit
him or Gasol.
He hit Steph on a couple of backdoor cuts. There's a time he brought the ball all the way up on his own and then hit Steph on a backdoor cut. I'm going to say he is.
Kevin Love?
He's not a center, though.
Well, he plays center on my fantasy team.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess he's in the discussion. So there are other people to consider, but there's no one whose name you say when you're like, okay, yeah, you're right. You can at least make an argument with each of the two. Now, I don't want to bring us back, but this is a question that's really important to me. We talked about the Warriors playing down to their competition. They do. Coaching? We talk about Mark Jackson being an amazing motivator. We say that is his principal skill as the head man behind the Warriors. But there are times these guys look less than motivated, and we all just took turns saying that they are certain games they literally just don't show up for. What the hell's going on?
Good players motivate themselves, and they find things to motivate them, and maybe that's the words from the coach, but maybe it's not. So I don't put any of this on Jackson at all. He's doing the best job that he can do, but you can't hold another man responsible for motivating somebody else. I'm not going to put that on him. Not even a coach. Absolutely not. These players are playing for a lot of money. They should not have to have some other guy getting them to play hard. It's ridiculous.
Do you agree with that?
Well, you're right. You're not paid to be a motivator. You gotta be the one to get guys out of funk by putting them in position to succeed. That's what good coaches do. That's why the Spurs get good shots, and we can't compare him to Popovich because he's just young in the game as a coach. But I'm losing followers on Twitter because I'm asking the question: we know Jackson came in and improved the defense and the culture surrounding that, changed the mindset of the team. Where has he improved since then?
I agree with that. Let's see. I only get so many F-bombs, so I'm reluctant to use it here, but I will say I don't give a fuck about how many Twitter followers you have. That said, I will also add I completely disagree with what you guys just said. I do believe that motivation is part of the coach's job. I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. Of course, you have to be able to call plays, but also, of course, you have got to be able to say whatever it is necessary to get these guys up for games. They shouldn't need motivation. Of course, they are getting paid, but I think we all know in this room that even though these guys are getting paid millions of dollars, not all of them come in with the right mentality for every single game. This might be a trivial way to put it, but any time we ever see a coach in any movie or any kind of public eye, what they're showing is that speech, that big moment where they get in
But
their
do you
ear
not think that
and they
Mark
fire 'em
Jackson
up.
is doing that?
Well,
You don't think Jackson's doing that?
That's
right
what
now?
I'm asking. No, I don't. I don't think. I mean, I would have
What
said
evidence do you have to show that at all?
that they lost by 20 points to Charlotte and looked flat the entire time. That they
But were
went
you-
to Utah the next game and did not show maximum effort, in my mind, throughout 48 minutes.
But do you know that Mark Jackson didn't do his job and say the things necessary, do one of those pump-up speeches? Do you know whether or not he did that?
I know that he didn't motivate them because they didn't come out there motivated.
And what did he do during those games earlier in the season where they didn't play at all for 3 quarters and then they destroyed in the fourth and made these huge comebacks against the Raptors, against the Mavericks? What did Mark Jackson have to do with that? Is it something he said that made Clay and Steph's shots start falling?
No.
The answer is no.
Right. Well, and also, I mean, when I'm talking about the whole spotlight and the speeches we see in the media, where you normally see that is football. And the reason why I'm making that distinction is because it's possible, it's really easy to motivate somebody over 16 games. If you're listening to the same voice and the same words and the same things over 82 games, it's possible that those messages start getting stale. You know, and so perhaps, I mean, to your point, Scott, maybe he did everything he could before that Utah game. Maybe he delivered a fire and brimstone speech that didn't reach them. All I know is that I am watching a team that does not show consistent effort. Sometimes we see them coming out on fire. Sometimes we see them being lackadaisical, and I'm trying to pin that on something. It sounds like you guys don't think it's Mark Jackson.
It's all on the players.
Well, it's not like he's got Daniel Marshall and Joe Smith out there.
Yep.
He's got guys that are capable of a whole lot of things, and you don't see anything scheme related to put them in the right positions.
Sure.
And I'm not on the fire Mark Jackson bandwagon. I think he's going to improve, but I'll concede that he's in the top third of coaches. That puts him around in the 10 to 13 range of coaches in the league based on motivational speaking factor and defensive factor. So now, can he put the offense in?
Right. And we'll get to his offensive shortcomings soon.
I'm more with Justin that my concern with Jackson is more from an X and O's perspective than a motivational one.
You know I share that concern. We'll get deep into that in the Charlotte one to support what you guys are saying and something that Jackson had absolutely nothing to do with. Klay Thompson's amazing, nasty slump. It seemed to come to an end in last night's win over Chicago, but it certainly cemented itself here in the Utah game. He went 3 for 20 in this game, did everything they could to shoot him out of it, and I will agree there's nothing that Jackson could have said that would have somehow changed his accuracy, his shooting, or his mentality. Luckily, we were able to get it or get over that shooting slump in this game.
That was the worst shooting game in the NBA this season.
And it was the type of thing, like, I know shooters are supposed to keep shooting.
Yeah, nobody else would keep shooting.
But in the fourth, it's like, my God, man, just get rid of the ball. Please, God, get rid of the ball.
A triple threat position allows you to pass or dribble, too.
No.
I mean, he has not gotten more than 4 free throws in a game since November. At some point, you've got to stop shooting. You've got to start driving to the basket. Why don't you try to get your jump shot started by getting to the free throw line,
Right.
get a couple easy ones, and then your jumper will start to fall.
Well, he had that body language, too, that kind of screamed, I know I'm not playing well, and I'm trying to get out of it, but I don't even believe in myself. There was a sequence in the fourth quarter where Draymond hit him screaming to the hoop, and he just completely blew the layup, and then thank God Draymond was the guy who pushed it back home, but it was point-blank shot, and there's no question he's going to miss it.
To pass it to the best shooter in the NBA, or maybe even dump it down to Bogut and let him eat a little bit? I mean, he's just taken away from everybody else's game. He's just firing constantly.
Now, I want to move on to the next one. Let me fire off one last thought on Utah. Is there anyone on earth who is more prepared for and who absolutely had to be a member of the Utah Jazz than Gordon Hayward? Is there a whiter person in the face of the goddamn NBA? Not just how he looks, his name, Gordon. Is there anyone who's been named Gordon and not been a white dude? That guy is so canned and so built for the Utah Jazz. It's amazing.
The proof will be in the pudding this offseason when they have to give him a max contract where no other team in the league would even consider it.
It's like him and Opie, but Opie's too old to play now, so let's focus in on Hayward. All right, we got to talk about it. Now seems like a good time. Let's get out of the way. The Charlotte loss. They followed up the Utah win with a loss at home to Charlotte, 91-75. Now, I thought this was a great chance for the Warriors to kind of get a little momentum going, get a win streak moving against a crap Charlotte team, and unfortunately ended up being one of the worst losses in a long time, getting your ass kicked by a Eastern team at home. In fact, this almost felt to me like this isn't a playoff team type of loss. What happened?
Yeah, I was like, is Bimbo Coles going to come out soon? Or, what team is this? This isn't the team that started the season. Not even close.
People are freaking out about this game. It's just one game in an 82-game season. It was a bad loss. You're going to have losses like this where the perfect storm happens, nobody's hitting, people are injured, things like that. I mean, even the 72 Bulls, the Bulls team that won 72 games, most wins ever, they had a loss to the Knicks, 104-72. So even the best team with the best record got blown out one time.
If Michael Jordan from that year by himself played this Charlotte team, he wouldn't have lost, I don't think. And if he had lost, it sure as shit wouldn't have been 91-75. Of course, there's going to be outliers like this. Of course, we can't look to this and decide what their future is going to be. But of course, also, there's reason for concern behind it.
Charlotte was hot. Charlotte was hot, man.
Well, it wasn't just...
They weren't that hot.
Also,
they only scored like 80-something points.
No, they were hot coming into this game. They won three out of a...
Hold on. We're all talking at the same time. Hold on for a second. Let me refute what you're saying. You're right that they were hot, but the biggest problem in this game was not the Warriors' defense.
Except for Kid Gilchrist, that shot.
Oh, he can't shoot at all. But one of their biggest problems was their offense. They went something like 2 for 1,000 from underneath the hoop. The person that personified that the most was David Lee. The first game in certainly his career as a Warrior. I'm not sure how far it stretches back in New York. First time he didn't get up to 10 points. In fact, he went, I think 2 or 3 for 13. And here he was talking about that offensive struggle.
The problems tonight were definitely the majority on the offensive end. Even if we hold some of those and they score 85 points, they still beat us. It's not as though they scored 115 points. We did the job most of the time defensively. Just offensively, we're horrible all the way around.
How are you doing physically?
If I step on the court, that's saying I'm 100%. Obviously, we know that's not true, but. I'm not going to use any of that as an excuse, that's for sure. But did not play my best tonight, especially, finishing the basketball. It's got to be better, and I wasn't that tonight. The mark of a really good team is that you take care of your home court and then you go out and you steal some on the road. And we've stolen our fair share of games on the road, but have not played at home. Games like tonight against Washington. Teams like that, we can't lose those at home, and just like Orlando got us twice last year, Charlotte did that to us this year, and it's very, very disappointing.
So more than anybody on this podcast, on any radio show, Scott has openly questioned whether or not the Warriors will even make the playoffs when we're all convinced that it's a lock, right? And these are games that you cannot drop when the West is so tight, so competitive. You can't drop games like this.
I agree, but I don't think it's something to panic about because I just think it was a perfect storm situation. I mean, you talk about David Lee's offense. The guy was injured. He's injured. He hasn't played since.
It wasn't.
He came out the next game.
My concern for this game doesn't begin and end with this game. With this loss, they now lost 5 of the last 7 home games during a stretch that they pointed to the entire year about why they're going to propel themselves towards the playoffs. So it was more a peak of frustration. What the hell is going on here?
It highlighted the trend.
Right. This is a game I went to. One of the other things that really struck out to me is that there's a huge difference between just rooting for a team and rooting for a team with expectations. I've been going to Warriors games my entire life. I have never heard the home team booed. That's true. I've heard the owner booed. I've heard the other teams booed. The fans at this game, one guy walked by me, leaves, comes back in 20 seconds later realizing he had forgotten something and came back just to boo like he was in The Princess Bride. That guy brought everything he had, and I guarantee you that he wouldn't have done that without the expectation. So some of this freak out isn't probably from the game. It's just that we all expect this team to be much better than a 20-point loss to a shitburger Eastern team. We should say it. He deserves it. Al Jefferson killed us the way that he always does. This guy has owned us for years. Didn't stop that here. I mean, he put up a dominant performance, ended up with 30 and 13. But I mentioned before I wanted to talk about Jackson's shortcomings offensively. Here seems to be a good portion. I've said this before. I'm sure I'll say it again. Let me say it now. Here's what concerns me about the Warriors. They are like an amazing pickup team that have played with one another for years and years and years. They're great in the transition. They're great when their jump shots fall in. They know each other's games. But when things come to a screeching halt and when you actually have to run a half-court set, they don't have one. They end up playing hero ball. They go down low, get a one-on-one matchup, and take a fall-away jump shot. If that's this team's offense, they're not going to win in the playoffs, because that's what happens in the playoffs is things slow down.
And Jackson says so himself. He's basically admitting that he doesn't have an offense. All his response to the questions that people have posed, just like the statement you just made, is it's a make or miss league.
Yeah, right.
He says it over and over
Right.
again. And if it's a make or miss league, well, how about we put guys in a better position to make the
Well, I'm glad that we have a regular season then, because that's why you have this. They're going to work this out. They're going to look at the tape. They're going to realize what they're doing wrong, and they're going to change it. And I think, unfortunately, they have a lot of tape out there to watch on some of these inconsistent performances, but they're going to eventually realize that they need to keep moving the ball, and when they move the ball, they get good shots.
I just want to see more than one pass on a half-court set once. You know, I mean, it seems like we get one pass, ball stops, and then they fire up a shot that is just absolutely killing me. A quick story from the game, and this kind of illustrates my own frustration. I didn't boo at any point. I'm not a booer. I did at one point scream out the word vagina. I don't remember the entire context. I think one of the Bobcats took a charge and they supported him, and I screamed out something along the lines of "You are a giant vagina," something
directed at the Bobcats
I
player,
think,
the
you know
ref?
what? I don't. I honestly.
How do you not remember?
Who is the vagina?
I'm not entirely positive. I'm not proud of the exchange. There was alcohol involved, frustration as well. Here's why I'm telling you guys. It's more of a safety tip. Turns out if you do in fact scream out the word vagina in a public setting, anybody who has children remarkably close to you gets really upset, and probably justifiably so. So I'd go ahead and keep that term to yourself if, in fact, you guys were worried about using it at any point.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind.
Who was there with you?
It was a friend, not the wife, luckily enough. I was going to invite you, but then I wouldn't bring it, so why do that? Last take on the game for me. Jesus Christ, Charlotte's terrible, man. McRoberts looks like Bigfoot killed us. Tolliver, who all Warrior fans know, terrible, killed us. I mean, Henderson, who I was calling Alan Henderson for at least 3/4 of the game, only to find out that he was Gerald Henderson, again, killed us. I don't understand what happened. Maybe Scott's right. It's a throwaway outlier, but Jesus, was this frustrating.
Yeah, especially when you spend all day. Like I said, you can't be confident about any win. But of course, the Bobcats are coming to town. I'm talking smack all day long. It looks stupid as hell all night long.
All right, one last game. This one, in fact, we won, thank God, so it might be a little bit more fun. 102-87 win over Chicago. I thought this one was important. Here's why. I think the Warriors are a little bit mentally fragile for all the things I've already said. They seem to be prone to streaks. When they're hot 10 games in a row. When they're not, they lose by impressive margins to a terrible team. This one seemed like an opportunity to slowly build some momentum as we move our way into the All-Star break. And it's a beatable team. Not only, well, let me start that over. At the beginning of the year, Chicago was good, possible contender. Since they've lost D. Rose to injury, they traded away Luol Deng, and last night, Big Nose Boozer was unable to play. So there was every reason that we should beat them, and luckily we did.
Well, obviously without Lee and Bogut, so that was I think that was a pregame match down from the Bulls. They said, "Oh, the big guys aren't playing. All right, Boozer, guess what? You get the night off." But they came out flat again, and then Curry gets the way Curry does.
I mean, they tried to disguise the lack of big men by going into a zone early. So you had Jermaine O'Neal starting, and then you had
3 fouls in 3 minutes.
3 fouls in 3 minutes. Then you had Draymond Green playing. So they're really small, and they go into the zone, which the first play then results in Jermaine O'Neal getting a defensive 3-second call.
Yeah.
And then Bulls get wide open shots, which get the Bulls in a rhythm. They stay on fire for the first quarter and a half. And you just, in my mind, knew that the Bulls weren't going to keep shooting that well.
And Heinrich and Augustine going off, you knew that can't last.
Yeah, well, they raced out to a 15-point lead. I spent too much time in the parking lot. Like I said, I came to this game as well. I came in, they were already down 10. Steph ultimately rescued us from that. In fact, hit a couple of bombs leading into the half and ultimately pushed us up and over the top. Thank God to get it. Before we get too far away, let's hear about Steph's performance from Steph himself.
Yeah, for sure. They came out, full guns blazing. They were executing on both ends at high intensity. We were the same, but they were making shots and got out to an early lead. Something that we've been trying to avoid. But we fought hard tonight, found a way to get the momentum back on our side in the second quarter. We really didn't look back, had pretty much control of of the tempo and the pace in the whole second half.
When did you find out Lee and Bogut weren't going to play, and what was the vibe of the team when Coach told you all that?
I found out when we got to the game. I mean, obviously, they're going to try to play and do everything they can on game day to get ready. But, I mean, the vibe is confident as always. Guys step up. The opportunity for some of our role guys to come in and make impact on the game, and they're up for that task. So, obviously, we'd like to have a quote-unquote #full squad, but we'll, we're going to come out fighting regardless of what the lineup is and try to get wins.
How bad is it that we'd rather see Curry shoot a one-footed, hand-in-his-face fadeaway from 35 feet than Andre Iguodala from the free throw line?
I don't know what's happened to him. You called that out a few weeks ago. I don't understand what happened to Iguodala's confidence. I don't know if it's injury or what.
Andres Iguodala.
It's painful to watch.
It's become clear that other teams have realized it too, because the scouting report on him now is just sag off him. If he has the ball, just sag back. He's not going to do anything.
And if he gets in a lane, slam him, send him to the line.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean,
and he's trying to avoid contact too,
yeah.
Which is the sign of someone who has absolutely no confidence at all. This is Mark Jackson's 100th win as a head coach. Doesn't mean a whole lot, but it seemed to be some type of milestone, so I wanted to throw that out there. And then let me also say this. Draymond Green played well in this game. Not exceptionally well. He wasn't the star, but he provided consistent effort from the start to the finish. I think you can make an argument on a team full of much bigger names that Draymond Green is the most consistent.
He had the highlight of the night too. That was a pretty awesome
Ooh,
dunk over
nasty.
Noah. That was on my page this morning. That was awesome.
His reaction to it too was hilarious. He just turns around screaming. I love his emotion.
I didn't even know he could dunk like that. I had no idea he had ups whatsoever.
I didn't know he could dunk.
Yeah, he on nipples. He had a big dunk against Utah as well.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, because his jump shot, he gets about 2 inches off the ground.
He couldn't jump over.
And he sags that. He sits that butt down, and he pops from down with his knees bent. But back to your point, I've said for the last year that if the Warriors don't re-sign him or he's involved in a trade, he's going to end up winning a championship before the Warriors because a contender is going to swoop him up.
Yeah, no
he
question.
is a winner.
Yeah, there's no question about that. All right, some miscellaneous points before we get to the D. Stern stuff. We've already mentioned one. Jermaine O'Neal's back. Not a whole lot to add there. The only reason I'm bringing it up, what the hell happened to Festus Ezeli? He got hurt during the playoffs last year. It's been an entire offseason. Jermaine O'Neal just got hurt, and he's still not back. I don't know anything about medicine. I'm not going to pretend.
He just came back, Jermaine O'Neal.
That's what I mean. Is that he's back before Festus, who injured himself what seems to be like in 1986. I mean, I don't know if he is done forever. We haven't had any updates whatsoever, but it's getting a little frustrating, man. Where the hell is this guy?
We talked about it at the time when it came out of nowhere, and it's like, oh, look at the Warriors with their secret injury again.
Right.
And they gave some ridiculous sounding timeline at the time. They said, oh, he's got a knee injury and he's going to be out 8 months. And we said, wait. Everybody else comes back a lot faster than that. So it's obviously more serious than we were led to believe, but the timeline is still the same. Right now we're missing him, but the timeline hasn't changed.
And to be fair, when he got hurt, he didn't release a tweet that said, I'll be back super soon, Warriors, 18,000 exclamation points. So maybe that's actually holding him back. We need to get him some Jermaine O'Neal game. Second and last miscellaneous point, Harrison Barnes has been announced as a member of this year's dunk contest. I'm hoping it could be a really good thing for him. Maybe he can find his confidence with a win and will stop being the gray pigeon he's been over the last few weeks and start being the black falcon that we've come to know and love.
This should be a good reminder for him that he can, in fact, dunk.
Yeah, I don't expect this to change anything because, number one, I don't think he's going to win. And number two, we're talking about a dunk contest, okay? This is what would affect his confidence is if he came into a game and played well and didn't have these Jekyll and Hyde halves where he goes over 5-1 and then starts to attack the basket and has success in the other half.
I think if he won, it would add to his confidence, but I'm not going to chase down that topic. Honestly, I only brought it up so that I could use the phrase "gray pigeon." I was really happy with that when we were prepping for the show.
Make a super corny joke?
Yeah, exactly. Right. I felt like I rushed it too when I was saying it. I felt like I was doing it too fast, but ultimately I felt like
Since you did bring it up, though, it's not the dunk contest that has the capability of raising his confidence. It's going to be the Rising Stars game. If he gets into that game and comes to the realization that I can own everybody my age, maybe that gets him his confidence back up. But
dunk contest
I don't see it.
helps somebody like Reggie Evans who is playing, or Jeremy Evans.
I was going to say Reggie Evans.
Jeremy Evans for Utah used the dunk contest, came out and had a much better second half for him. So, I mean, I think that there's some evidence out there that it could help him. Yeah, but I mean,
Jason
who knows?
Richardson
We'll find
needs
out.
to come back and have more confidence after that, but I don't see it.
There you go. All right. Time to move on to my favorite segment of the show, and certainly true for this week, WTH, where this week, in honor of the impending retirement, in fact, a retirement that just happened, we're going to try to figure out what the hell were the most entertaining moments in David Stern's illustrious career. Now, David Stern has a lot of very notable, very memorable moments. I think for right now, at least as far as the general public is concerned, he's most well known for his performance at the draft. Certainly we can all agree that he has been there to welcome in, if not all, most of the giant iconic names that have come and played through the league during our era. Here's a little kind of corny montage that'll help remind us of that.
Welcome to the 1984 NBA Draft. The Houston Rockets select Hakeem Olajuwon, Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley of Auburn University.
The Orlando Magic selects Shaquille O'Neal,
Dwayne Wade,
Scott Pippen, Blake Griffin.
How great is the song behind that thing?
Bumpin'.
Not as good as You're the Best.
That's factually correct. It's really easy to forget how long he's been there. Hearing that series of names and the various eras that he's spanned kind of helps remind me, at least, that he has been the one consistent face throughout my entire fandom here in the NBA. It was kind of cool to see, you know?
Yeah, well, that doesn't go into his role in rigging the 1985 draft.
With the Pat Ewing draft? You don't
draft.
believe in that, do you?
And it's Patrick Ewing. I'm not doing this Scotty to Scott Pippen stuff, all right?
If my boy D. Stern can call him Scott Pippen, I'm going to go ahead and call Pat.
He's a gangster. Don't talk about David Stern. He'll shut down your podcast.
Yeah, no, that's true.
He's just decided that Scott's going to die in 35 minutes.
He's got a lot of time on his hands now, too, so watch your back.
I want to hear that, though. Do you actually think that he... So for those who may not know the backstory, in 1985, Pat Ewing was the surefire #1 franchise-changing pick. I think the Knicks had the least amount of chance to do it at that point.
And the Warriors had a high chance.
The Warriors had the highest chance. They got the last possible selection. I think they ended up with Chris Mullin, so that's okay. But then they weren't using the ping pong balls. At that stage, they had envelopes, and the theory goes that D. Stern froze the envelope so that when he reached in, he could feel which one had the Knicks in it, and that's the one he pulled out. Back to you, Scotty. Do you think that's real? Do you think that there's some truth behind that?
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. We're talking D. Stern, this guy. That was back in 1985 where he couldn't be so obvious with it.
Right.
Fast forward to the Chris Paul trade, where at this point he's so cemented in his legacy and has so much power, he just says, I'm going to tell you guys, I'm vetoing this thing. I'm not letting this happen.
He's since explained at that point they were running the team, so he did it they were running the New Orleans. So he didn't do it as the position from the league. He did it as they looked at it from New Orleans and decided, no, we're not getting enough.
And you're the only one that drew that line.
It's true.
Everybody knows
that. It's a very important line.
There was no line there for him.
They vetoed, I think, another one involving Gasol or Bynum.
You jumped into this without any real evidence.
And I knew that, but that's why we have housekeeping.
But you're the encyclopedia around here, man. I'm highly disappointed.
I can tell. I know Justin's really. It's like watching one of your idols.
Yeah,
fail.
exactly.
That's
I'm like, man, you're supposed to know this.
Know that I'm luffing it. Finally,
yeah. Well,
know something.
I'm gonna cut all of this. So.
Yeah, he's right on 2 counts that there was another one that's vetoed that I can't think of, but I'm not expected to know this. And 2, he will cut all this out, so it doesn't really matter.
You guys don't know. Before we get too far away from the draft, the other thing, perhaps the main thing I like about D. Stern's performance at the draft is how he just gets booed like a savage and does not care at all.
Relishes in it.
He takes it like a WWF villain, like Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. Like, oh, bring it. And there's no better evidence of that than his performance at his last and the last NBA draft. Here's D. Stern on that.
We've had to explain to our international audience that the boo is an American sign of respect.
Turns out, Scotty, that you are not the only person who thought that D. Stern was rigging the draft, and it's actually the perfect transition into my favorite moment of D. Stern's career, that being a back and forth he had with shock jock champion Jim Rome on Jim Rome's show shortly after the results of the draft. I guess this last year came out. I'm not sure when it was, either last year or 2 years ago. Anyways, here's D. Stern on Jim Rome.
You know, New Orleans won the draft lottery, which of course produced the usual round of speculation that maybe the lottery was fixed. I know that you appreciate a good conspiracy theory as much as the next guy. Was the fix in for the lottery?
You know, I have two answers for that. I'll give you the easy one. No, and a statement. Shame on you for asking.
You know, I understand why you would say that to me, and I wanted to preface it by saying it respectfully. I think it's my job to ask because I think people wonder.
No, it's ridiculous, but that's okay.
I know that you think it's ridiculous, but I don't think the question is ridiculous because I know people think that.
Stop beating
I'm
your
not
wife
saying
yet?
I'm not saying that I do, but I think it's my job to ask you that.
Have you stopped beating your wife yet?
I think I understand why you're frustrated by that. I think that I understand why that would upset you. I would hope that you would not hold that against me.
I wouldn't hold it against you.
And I don't want to ask you a question by, here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to say, hey, Commissioner, people would say, because I'm going to ask a direct question. But people did wonder. But that was not a cheap thrill.
Well,
I got no thrill out of that.
It's a cheap trick.
No, flopping is a cheap trick.
No. But listen, you've been successful in making a career of it, and I keep coming on.
Making a career of what, though? Commissioner said that I take great offense to that. Making a career of what?
What offense?
Cheap thrills?
Are you taking offense?
I am now. Now I am. If you're saying that I've made a career of making cheap thrills.
Your time, taking on the world, and now Jim Rome is pouting. I love it.
No, I'm not pouting. I take
great.
offense. There's a difference between pouting and taking offense. I take offense to that like you took offense to the question. What if I said, were you pouting when I asked the question?
Taking offenses. You want to hang up on me?
No, I can't hang up on you because I'm running out of time. I would never hang up on you.
Okay. Listen, I got to go call somebody important like Stephen A. Smith now. He's up next.
What a savage!
That was definitely David Stern's greatest moment, but I'd put it out there that was the greatest moment in the history of commissioners of any sport.
Can you imagine any other commissioner doing that? This felt more like a bully on the schoolyard than it did as like some commissioner on a radio show.
I went from indifferent to a huge David Stern fan after that.
I listened to this live. I remember, being in my car and having it go through and not believing what I was hearing. It shows so many of his amazing traits. It shows his ability to think on his feet immediately. It shows his ability to focus his thoughts and deliver those thoughts clearly, concisely, and powerfully. The idea that he could take the allegation from Jim Rome, saying, okay, you fixed the draft, and then be able to bring it right back to him and give him a statement that you can't erase in the same way. Whether or not you meant it, Rome, whether or not it's true, whether or not it's not, did you stop beating your wife? No one's ever going to forget that the same way you're accusing me of fixing the draft. This guy is crazy smart and is not afraid to use that intelligence to punk the hell out of you.
Yeah, it shows he does his homework, too, so watch out when you speak to this man.
I love the part about where he throws Stephen A. Smith in his face, too, because, that's just like, again, just big times him one more time, just I'm going to throw out a rival competitor.
Who's more important.
Yeah.
I'd like to go speak to somebody else. And
who is somewhat of a joke around town.
Yeah, hell yeah, is just going to scream at me and I won't care what the hell he's saying. I mean, Rome has made a career of intimidating people. That's what he does. He thinks faster than you. He's going to say something louder than you and you're going to have to back off. In this one, it was the exact opposite. Rome had to run and leave. He couldn't come up with anything. He's like, time to move
on. And Stern is known as an intimidator too, but he does it with a soft voice and a smile on his face that just makes him a savage. I love it.
Here's the last thing I wanted to bring up with D. Stern, and then I'll turn it over to you guys if there's other ones you wanted to cover. The whole Tim Donaghy thing. You guys remember that? Tim Donaghy was accused of being a ref who was in the mob's pocket, and he was fixing games. There is no bigger death nail for any professional sport than to suggest that the outcomes are fixed. The reason we like these things, they're reality TV. The reason we like it is because you don't know what's going to happen. If we believed that these games were fixable, how much does that damage the reputation of the league and the viewership, right? That happens We never hear from that dude again. He disappears. They don't bring it up anymore. If they only had, there's no way, if the Mafia got one dude, there's no way they limit it to one dude. But somehow, because Stern is such a savage, we never even considered that. We don't even talk about it anymore. Donaghy is completely out of the picture. We don't even bring him up.
And no other ref came up I don't even know if they did an investigation, but I think normally the response is like, oh, we're going to investigate this, and our other refs, I'm not sure anything was done. But, it is amazing that he was able to bury that one.
Did we get flashed with one of those Men in Black pens
That's
where
possible.
it just erases your memory and we're not even allowed to remember it? Or does Stern have the Jedi mind trick? It never happened.
Exactly. This isn't the ref you're looking for. That's
exactly. You can't see the hand motion, but it's there. You know what we're talking about.
Or do we all just want to still believe in the game we love?
Could be a little. I'm sure there's some strange, slow mix of all of them, but it does take the kind of media savvy that only Stern has to at least, if we did want to forget it, he still has to give us the ability to forget it. I really feel like if this was in the NFL, every time we saw the game, we would be talking about, thinking about, and hearing about the fact that these games were fixed. We never hear that from the NBA anymore.
And how many times have we had the top pick, going right back to the beginning with the fixed drafts? How do we only get the first pick when Joe Smith is the consensus number one pick? There's something going on there, and David Stern is the one that has the power to perpetrate it. So I don't know why I'm such a big fan of his.
So we're now flipping over to Adam Silver. I got that right?
Adam Silver is the guy.
I thought
now.
it was David Silver.
Yeah, I wish. I always loved him from 90210. I'm pretty sure it's Adam Silver. Scotty and I were talking before we got behind the mics about an interview Silver gave during one of the last Warrior games. I didn't get a chance to watch it. What do you think? Personality? We something to look forward to here?
Well, we've had a chance to observe him at the second round of the draft every year. We know that he's a total geek. He's a numbers guy and is not going to be nearly as entertaining as David Stern has been.
He kind of looks like the nerdy character from The Simpsons with the glasses and always speaks with that super Kando voice. Maybe he'll bring something, but I'm not holding my breath.
I'm pretty confident that over the last 15 years, he's done as good a job as anybody could of counting the money, but I don't know what else he does.
Well, from me specifically, hopefully the Huddle at large, and certainly from Dub Nation, we'll miss you, David Stern. You were an amazing addition to the NBA, and I'm sure we'll never see another sports commissioner like you.
And please don't let anything happen to Scott. I know he talked bad about you, but we're sorry from the bottom of our hearts. Don't do anything to Scott.
I can't imagine how much false information I'll be spewing into this microphone without him, so I echo those comments. All right, huge fun kicking it with you guys. We love it so much every week. It was true this week. Let me drop a quick quote, another one from Charles Barkley, and I've got you to thank for this, Justin. Ernie Johnson, when the entire TNT crew was watching a replay where Reggie Evans accidentally grabbed the balls of Chris Kaman and trying to make light of it, Ernie Johnson says, quote, Reggie Evans got caught with his hand in the cookie jar there, and without missing a beat, Charles Barkley answers, Ernie, I don't know where the hell you get your cookies at, but I never get them from there.
You could just make this the Charles Barkley quote segment of this show.
I've got 50 quotes now, and the next 48 will all
They're
be
all good.
Barkley. Please remember, you guys, you can find us at Twitter, Warriors Huddle. Our email account is warriorshuddle@gmail.com. Our website is warriorsworld.net. It's also at nbahuddle.net, and we can be found on most podcasting sites, including iTunes, where you can rate us, which we would really, really appreciate, and can also subscribe. Justin, where can we find you, man?
Well, of course, there's trappedingoldenState.com, but you're more likely to get in touch with me on Facebook or Twitter. Search for me at Trapped in Golden State, and everybody who's heard of me already knows that you can get Dub City and Dub Nation t-shirts and hoodies on my website, trappedingoldenState.bigcartel.com. And, we're kind of beating around some things around the bush right now where we know that the fans that listen to your show are hardcore Warrior fans. If you're still listening right now, you're a hardcore Warrior fan. We appreciate you listening, and we want to hook you up. So we're gonna come out with some things in the next few weeks that'll show our appreciation for you sticking with the team and sticking with the Huddle and sticking with Trapped in Golden State.
That's absolutely right. Something to look forward to. We'll see you guys next week.
Is there a heaven for a gangster? Gangster, gangster, Is there a heaven for a gangster? Gangster, gangster, Is there a heaven for a gangster?
Good.
You guys mentioned Heinrich. I forgot to play it. Here's Heinrich following the game. I didn't get a chance to actually translate that from Elvish, so my apologies. Congratulations to him for being able to play in a league where he is, in fact, the only elf. Props to you, buddy. I'm not sure what the hell you just said, but I'm sure it was not very nice.